Hi guys, welcome back. And in this video, we'll be working on the front end. And so you can install React globally, or you can just install it for this particular project using npx. And so what I want to first do is make a directory because I want to create a directory called client. And then once that happens, basically I want to cd into the client folder. And then I want to do npx create React app, which is used, and you put dot for that current folder that you're in, and it'll basically generate the entire React boilerplate inside of that folder for you. And so I might cut this part because alright, you can see here now it's done. It says happy hacking. So now once that's done here, we can just use clear. And we control backtick to close the terminal. If we go inside of our client folder, now you can see there's a ton of stuff here. And they even have a yarn lock here for us because they recognize automatically that we were using yarn in our root folder. This wouldn't be here unless if you use the npm, but this automatically generated it for us. And so you can see here that we go to our package.json. You can see that we have a bunch of things here. These are like basically like what we're using here, our dependencies. We have our scripts here, our start, build, test, and eject scripts. We'll be using start and build mainly. And so basically you can see here, this is like everything inside of our config, similar to our JSON config of this one here. And let me see what else here. This is our public folder. So you see we have a favicon here. We have index.html, which is where our entire app will be inside of this root div here. All of these are just comments. We don't need these here or anything. Make it look a little bit cleaner for you. And so basically, like, we have our root div here. This is the title of our app. So I'm going to change this to album creator. And then I want to save that. And so very quickly, while we're inside of our client folder, if we just run start, it should open up an actual dev server for us, and it should open up a browser, which will show us our application. So let's do that first. So you can see here, we have it running now. You can see you have a spinning React symbol here, and you can see the name album creator up there. So it works. Oops. And basically, so we can control C to stop it. Oops. And so basically, that's how that works. Our entire project is decided as root div for the front end. So, and the reason how that works basically is we go to our IndexJS. Oops, not this one. That's our root.js. Let's see, public, no, source. There we go. IndexJS. You can see here that entire like app, which is our like app component here, is inside of there, and that's like what we're basically using when we render. And so basically we're rendering that, we're using the down model to grab the root div by the ID of root, which is what we had inside of our index.html, and we're actually rendering the components here with that. And this is a service worker if you're doing a progressive web app. We don't need this for this project here, so we can get rid of that. I also want to get rid of index.css because we're just going to use the global app CSS. You also have obviously inline styling, which you keep the CSS in the components, or you can like make style objects. But for this app, I have CSS I'm going to put in here for that. So I just want to save that. Let me see here. We can get rid of the logo. We don't need that. And the service worker. And the index.css. And basically, when we go to our app.js, you can see here, this is what it looks like. It's a functional component. You can see here, we're importing React, which is the library, the logo, which we can get rid of, and then the app.css, which is what we're using here. And I have some CSS here. This is the CSS they give you. I'm going to put in there the CSS for what I have here. And basically, I made this on my other computer. So I'll go through these quickly. Let me just do. So basically, I reset the padding. So I set the padding and margin to 0. It's the app body here, which is width 100%, height for 100%, fill up everything. So basically, really quickly, inside of the index.html file, right inside of the head, I want to actually create a style tag here, so we can do style like that. And basically, I just want to do body, and I just want to set the background color. And that just sets the background color throughout the whole thing, because the actual app component only takes up like the space of whatever it is. So there'll be a lot of like space below the body inside of the actual like web page that'll actually not be like the background color of Aqua. So that's why I had to do that. But anyways, back to this. Basically, this is the form here. Um, I'll just go through each one of these like this so you can see it and get each one here. Also, if I remember, I should put a link in the description so that you can grab this entire file. Basically the entire project from their GitHub repository, so that you wouldn't even have to copy this. But basically, that's the CSS. Um, and so let me see what else here. I want to change this to a class component because I want to show you basically how to use class components as well as the stateless functional components to use hooks, and basically how you can use both. You can use both in the same app. Stateless functional components are basically it's less of a package, like it's less size. So basically, like it's like basically less like weight, pretty much, for like your app. But you can still use class components inside of a application that uses functional components. And basically, in order in order to switch from these two, I'll just turn this to class. I'll do app like that. I'll get rid of the parentheses and I'll just say extends, and then the actual component, which you can bring in from React like this, or you do React component like down here, but I'm just bringing a component like that. And then basically, instead of return, you want to basically put the return statement aside something called render, which is the lifecycle method that you get with class components. The main difference is with functional components, you don't get lifecycle methods, you get hooks. And basically, I'll show you like the difference with that in a second throughout making the front end here. So that's basically what this should be here. You can see the errors go away. You can also put prop types as well, but we don't have any for the app component. And so basically, we're going to be using context API for like to show you how to use that as well, similar to Redux. Um, and so basically, like I want to use the context API to show you just how to set everything up. Um, and basically, I want to make that first because, like, for the app component, there's some stuff in there that I kind of need to put in after making the context component. Really quickly, I'll just make a state object like this. By default, already user will be true and message will be empty. And already user is basically switching between the upload and login form. If you're using React Router down, you can have it on a separate endpoint, but I basically put it all on the same endpoint because it was a simple app. And so basically, first let me just make the, so I'm gonna put everything inside of a context folder for you. So I'm gonna call inside of source here, this is where you wanna put everything, not in public, you wanna put it in source. And I'm gonna call it context, like that. And inside of there, I wanna create another folder called state. I wanna create inside of the context folder, I wanna create one called reducers, for any reducers you wanna have. And then I will create another one for actions. So basically, this will be like action types, and then like for the dispatch to the reducer, and also any action like functions that you want to import into your state if you want to keep it clean and keep it in a separate file. So basically, that'll allow you to do that as well. Um, Let me see 1 second. Just State. Okay, so inside of state, I just want to make a file called AppState because you can make as many context states as you want. For Redux, you can only make one global state, basically one app state. Um, but with context, you can make as many different ones as you want as long as you export the providers and you have to pass them in. So basically, everything is in-house with React. So you don't need any like external like third-party basically dependency or anything like that for this. So I'm gonna call this app state like that, and basically to keep the same convention as app.js as well. So app state. So basically, what I want to bring in is I want to bring in React, and I want to bring in something called React hooks. So I'm gonna destructure it, and it'll be create context hook, and then a use reducer hook. And use reducer is used to change the actual state. So I'm gonna bring those in from React like that. And basically, I won't bring in the reducer or the actions yet, or the well, I guess I'll install Axios because we kind of need that to set this up. So inside of, make sure you're in your client folder first, and then you want to do npm install or yarn add, and you want to do Axios. Just like if you were on the back end side, because you want Axios specifically to this front end folder. You don't want it in the back end because we're not using it there. And so once it gets done saving, we want to use yarn as well to lock it, the version and everything. Alright, so now that that's done, you just clear the terminal like that. And now I want to basically get back to importing. So I want to do import Axios from Axios. And so basically, I know you use const require on the back end, use import here. That's just how it is. So basically, I want to do initial state. And so basically, this will be our global state. So for our app.js, which is where all our components will be inside of, which I can actually get rid of this here. This might be confusing. And basically, all of our components will be inside of that. So any of these context variables that we put in here, we can access throughout. And so I want to do user ID, which is what we get when we return from the back end. Remember, when we return the user ID in the token, I want to do is loading. I want to set it to a default of false. That's basically if something is loading. Any messages that you would want to put. Now I didn't do messages in this app in terms of setting them. If you get any error messages back, but you can add that to this project. And basically, but I did like send the messages back from the back end for you, and then token. So basically, the token that we get back, which we don't even have to put it here. You can just set it to the local storage variable. But I was going to show you that you can also set it there, and it should also register for you. So inside of this app state, basically we just want to, or this con state, which is what they call it, which is context state. Basically, we want to export two constants, and that's basically const of global context, or I call it app context for app.js. And so we'll do app context is equal to create context, and then we want to pass in simply the initial state. That's the default, and that's the hook. So we use the create context hook, and we pass in a default, and then we're exporting it. So that's basically what the state's initially going to be. Now, what we actually use to provide that context is something called the provider. So the const, and then we'll do app provider is equal to, and then inside of here is basically a function. So it's almost like passing in a prop if you're dealing with props and with functional components. At the end of the day, this is basically a component syntax. Like this is a functional component. By the way, before I continue, if you come here and do ES7, you want to get these ES7 React Redux GraphQL React Native snippets. This will allow you to basically create these components with snippets like For instance, I can do like RAFC like that, and it'll create a functional component for me. RFC creates one that's not like the actual stateless functional component. You have another one, RCC, which creates a class component. So it's very useful. You definitely want to get that if you're using VS Code. And so basically, back to this, you just want to pass in the children, which are like the children components, children HTML elements, into the provider. And so basically, what we want to do is we want to use another hook. And so how we do hooks is we use the array destruction instead of object destruction. And it'll be this state and dispatch for this one. And basically, I want to use reducer because we're using a reducer to change this state here, which it won't be this initial state, but the actual state, which is this will be the state that's always updated. This one's just the initial values. This is the state that's always going to be changing, and it's going to be changing via this method here, which I call dispatch. Is the same naming convention for Redux, and it'll change that state for you. So it'll be state dispatch, and it'll be element reducer. Well, actually, I can call this picture reducer. And then we'll do initial state, which is the initial value that it takes in. And so now we have that, and we want to just create one more variable here, and I'm going to call it headers. And this is for when we're sending that header type of application JSON, that content type. And so we just want to do headers. I know the syntax is weird because I named it headers there, but that's like a field because when we pass this in here, I guess I'll call this options instead of headers because this is basically Axios options, and then you get and one of them is a field of headers, and then that's when we would pass in stuff like content type and then application JSON like that. And so now we want to actually create the functions for the actual state. We can put these in like a separate thing, like we can put them in our the actions folder here. Like you can create functions and put them in there and export them. But I'm simply going to just put them inside of this provider provider function. And so what I'm going to do is const register user is equal to the user object. And then basically we're going to dispatch, which remember is what this function is that changes the picture state. Dispatch. And then we'll do because we're changing the user ID here as well, maybe I should call this, instead of picture reducer, I should call it app reducer like that, just to make more sense. And so this is where we can dispatch types of the action, basically what action we want to do. And that type will be used because like when we use a switch inside of the reducers file, basically it'll determine based off that type we pass in what it should do. And then the payload, which is like you can pass in anything as well. It don't have to be the word payload. It can be ID or anything. And that'll basically pass in the rest of the fields of basically whatever you want to change. So we want to pass in an object with this data. And so it'll be on type registering. And then like if there's any messages, like for instance, there's a status of 400, you want to do type of add message, which I didn't make yet. But you can name these whatever you want. I named it add message when I made it. And then the actual message, which remember you can do payload as well. I'm gonna just call it message, and whenever you get anything back from res.json from the backend with Express, it always returns it in an object called data. You want to do res.data first, and then whatever the field was. Otherwise, it won't work. And so now we want to, and actually I kind of put this first. I was supposed to actually make another dispatch. So each time we make another request to the back end, you want to clear the messages, obviously. So I made something called clear message for that. Like that. And then so now, right after that, we just simply want to do the Axios request. So we can do Axios.post. And then now, before I do that, one more thing you need to do if you don't want to have to do http://localhost or whatever your domain is, and then do like the API routes. You have to basically put in the actual client folder package JSON, something called a proxy, which is a field that you can put anywhere in here as long as it's outside of these other fields. You want to put comma. Remember, this is JSON, so double quotes, and the proxy for this will simply be the actual domain name for us, because we're testing this. It'll be the local host of 5,000. But if you put this to some type of host, you want to basically change that to the domain name, because basically the client folder and the backend are two separate apps. So like you could have this client folder on a separate computer, and as long as you have the actual backend running on another computer, you can send these requests and it should still work. So that's why that is like that. So basically, now that we use a proxy, we can simply just do API like that, and then we can do auth and register, which is what this is, because we're doing a register, hitting the register endpoint. And we want to pass in the object. I already JSON string. Now you have to JSON stringify these before you send them in Axios. It doesn't automatically do it for you. And so what you want to do, basically what I did was when I called this method, I stringified it as JSON in the component that I use it in, which is why I didn't do it here. So I'll do that in a second. And basically the options, which is, remember, it just has that headers of content type application slash JSON. And so then I want to do that then. And then that basically, it basically returns, you can name this whatever you want. You name it response, you name it res. I'll just do res. And then we can get a catch if there's any like errors. So we want to log that. And so basically inside of here we want to do, if we have like a response status, so we can do res.status. Because remember we did .status on the back end, and then .json to depend on JSON, so that .status is what I'm accessing here from the response. And so it'll be res.status, and then if it was equal to 400, like that, and that means that we need to dispatch the actual messages of add message and then whatever the messages are. So we can dispatch type add message, which I obviously didn't make yet, and then the message. Oh wait, I already did that here, so we just get rid of that here. That should go inside of here, and then that should just be res.data.message. Remember data because we were JSONing the object back. And so that's basically what we would do there. Then if it's not, meaning that it was successful, then we want to dispatch a type of get user ID or set user ID. So we can do set user ID. Makes more sense. And then basically it'll be the payload. Because remember, we're turning the ID and the token, so we're not just doing one thing. So we can return like them separately, or you can just do like the entire payload and just do res.data like that. And then that'll be it for the for the register function here. So then we can go down here. And by the way, once I'm done with this, I'm going to obviously return something from the function, the app provider function. And that's going to be what we use to pass into our, wrap around our entire, like, all the children components in order to use it. But I simply just didn't do that yet. I'm going to do that in a second. And so for the next one, we want to do the login function, which would be mostly the same stuff. I called it login user. And this will take in a user object as well. And you can put parentheses around this, but basically, like, it's the same thing as if you didn't put parentheses around it, as long as you have one parameter. And so we'll do dispatch. Obviously, each request we want to dispatch a type of clear message. And then we want to actually make our request. So axios.post to API/auth/login. And then we want to do the user object, which remember I stringified as JSON, or I will be doing that um, in the component that I use it in. And then the response, now I just simply want to do the same thing. So if res.status is equal to 400, I want to dispatch the type of add, so I can just bring this in here. Yeah, I want to just set it again as well. So I'm going to just grab this whole thing here. Actually just do this. There we go. And then if we have a catch, if we have an error, we want to be able to log that. And then that's it for the login function. And then one more function I want to do in here. I have the other like CRUD functions for changing the pictures inside of the actual components, but I left this one here just because like when I was making it, I made it in a way to where I had to like basically change the overall structure of it a little bit. But basically I just left this one here, so I'm gonna just put this one here as well. Basically it takes in the pic created at, which is that timestamp. Remember on the back end we use that to actually pull the one we want from the array so that we can get rid of it. And so basically I want to create like another headers, not really like a headers object, but I want to append onto it. So I want to do, because remember this is a CRUD method that we're using that we need authentication with the token. So I want to do options dot headers, and I want to use JSON syntax, associative array syntax, basically adding it. So I do X off token because remember that's what we named it on the back end. That's what we're looking for the header. And let me see here. Config rec dot header right here. So X off token. That's basically what we're setting here for this. And we want to set it to the state dot token, or you can set it to local storage dot get item of token, like that, and both should work. And basically like the state obviously being the state here, which is what the actual state is for this context that we're using. And so I just want to do const, then I want to do object JSON. I stringified it in here for this particular one.